The psukim in Parshas Kisavo, talk about Mikra Bikurim, recount the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim. V'anita v'amarta lefnei Hashem lokecha, arami overavi v'yair Mitzrayima, v'yagar sham b'mtei v'yisham l'goy gadol atzum v'rav. V'yareu otanu etzim v'yanunu v'yitnu aleinu avodah kasha, v'nitzak el Hashem elokei avotenu v'yishmat kolenu v'yar donyenu v'tavolenu v'tlachatzenu. These psukim, which are famous because we use them in order to be mesaper the sipur of Yitzias Mitzrayim through Arami Overavi, tell the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim. And in the Haggada, we bring psukim that back up the story with things that actually happened from Parsha Shmos. For instance, v'netzak el Hashem elokei avotenu, kama shene'emar, and then it brings the pasuk in Shmos, v'yihi bayamim harabim hahem, v'yamat melech Mitzrayim, v'yanchu b'nei Yisrael min avodah, v'yizaku v'tal shavatam el ha'elokim. So this is the pasuk that it brings to support what it says in Mikra Bikurim, v'netzak el Hashem elokei avotenu. The problem is that there's a discrepancy between the account in Mikra Bikurim as opposed to what it says in Shmos. In Mikra Bikurim it says v'netzak el Hashem elokei avotenu. There's a ketovet, there's a the tzaka is to Hashem. They're calling out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're crying out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then it says, Kama shene'emar, and it brings the pasuk in Shmos, Vayanchu b'nei Yisrael min ha'avodah, vayizaku. They cried out from the work. It says what the source of crying out is, but not the direction or where it's going. It never mentions that they cry out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It mentions that they're crying, Vayanchu min ha'avodah, vayizaku, vatal shavatam el elokim. And then, those cries went up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but they were not directed at HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So in Mikra Bikurim, in Parshas Kisavo, it says, "V'netzak el Hashem elokei avotenu, v'yishma Hashem et kolenu." While the psukim that are close to support the psukim, Kama shene'emar, it says, "V'yanchu b'nei Yisrael min ha'avodah, v'yizaku, v'tal shavatam el ha'elokim." The question is how we deal with that discrepancy. Parallel psukim to the ones in Mikra Bikurim we find also in Parshas Chukas. Vayishlach Moshe Melachim Kadesh Melach Edom, when they want to go through Edom. So over there Moshe also recounts the story of Sipur Mitzrayim. Ko amar achicha Yisrael atayadat et kol atla'a Hashem etzadnu ve'edu avoteinu Mitzrayim v'neshev b'Mitzrayim yamim rabim v'yarei lanu ha'Mitzrim v'la'avotenu v'netzak el Hashem v'yishma kolenu. There also v'yitzak el Hashem, they cried out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu heard their voice. So the psukim in Chukas are very, very similar to the psukim in Kisavo, but they're very, very different than what we find in Parsha Shmos. The question is, how do we deal with that discrepancy? So what I'd like to suggest is the following. We normally, the question is a very, very serious question, because when we talk about tefillah, or tefillah b'Eitzara, one of the major components of tefillah is that it's directed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if you just talk about crying out because of the avodah, you're not talking about tefillah at all. It's not that there's a simple, bit of a discrepancy in the psukim, but you're not talking about tefillah. You're talking about crying out out of pain, because of the work, because of hardship, but you're not talking about tefillah at all. But what I'd like to suggest is maybe to modify that a little bit. The source of tefillah b'Eitzara is a pasuk in Parshas Baloscha. כי תבוא מלחמה בארצכם על עצר צורתכם, והראותם בחצוצות, ונזכרתם לפני השם אלוקיכם, ונושעתם מאויביכם. If there's a war, if there's a tzara, then what you do is you blow the trumpets, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will remember you, and He will save you. The Rambam, when he quotes the mitzvah of what you do be'ez tzara, which again, b'divrei sofrim, is to have a tanis, mitzvahs hasemin haTorah lizok ula'ariya b'chatzotzot. We're not just talking about trumpets, but lizok also to cry out. Ula'ariya b'chatzotzot al kol tzara shetavol hatzibur. Shemar tzara tzoratchem. Klomar kol דבר שיצא לכם כמו בצור דבר הרבה וכיוצרם זעקו עליהם והריעו. Rambam mentions zaka, tzaka. He doesn't talk about to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Again, the koteret of Hilchos Tanis might be a little bit different, but here in the halach he mentions tzaka. There's a hariotem b'chatzotzot. Who's it directed at? It seems to me that there is meaning to the tzaka itself. Crying out, when it's a sincere tzaka, when it's a primal scream, which basically shatters the foundations of one existence. That's the tza'akah that we're talking about over here. And that's very, very basic. When there's a tzara, you cry out, and it's really sincere and profound call from the depths of one's heart. That's the tza'akah that we're talking about over here. And the pasuk in Tehillim says, Karo Hashem l'nishbrei leiv v'etakei baruch yoshia. If there's shivron leiv, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is close to you. Zivchei Elokim ruach nishbara leiv nishbar v'nitkeh Elokim lo tavazeh. The broken heart, crying out from a broken heart, from difficulty, from tzara. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is listening. Not because you called out to him, but because you're going through a sincere and profound metamorphosis, and you're really just shattered by the events that you're going through. The Mishnah in Tanyos talks about the tefillos that we add on certain Tanyos. We add 6 brachos to the Shemona Esrei. What I want to talk about is the difference between the 4th and the 5th. Al haravius hu omer misha ana et Shmuel b'mitzpeh hu ya'aneh etchem v'yishma kol tza'akatchem hayom hazeh baruch Hashem shomea tza'akah. The bracha is shomea tza'akah. The 5th, misha ana et Yair b'har HaKarmel hu ya'aneh etchem baruch Hashem shomea tefillah. There are 2 separate brachas. There's one bracha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu shomea tza'akah. Then there's another bracha that is shomea tefillah. Regarding tefillah, the being mispal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a basic part of tefillah. There's no tefillah if you're just saying words. There has to be some kind of a communication between man and between God, and that's shomea tefillah. But there's another bracha called shomea tza'akah. And tza'akah, the question is, what's the source of that tza'akah? Is it profound? Is it sincere? Is it deep? HaKadosh Baruch Hu listens to a tza'akah, even if it's not tefillah. And what the psukim in Shemot are describing is a tza'akah, a sincere, profound tza'akah. And what they noticed is that when you have that profound tza'akah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu listens, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is close, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will come to save you. And in retrospect, 40 years later, when they looked at the events of Mitzrayim, they understood that when they called out, that wasn't just in a vacuum. That sincere cry was El Hashem Elokei Avotam.